Live from New York, it's Ask an Engineer and Legal Counsel.
Hi! We're a few minutes behind schedule, but it's worth it. It's because it's late. Ask Engineer is only late once, but it's good forever.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
We're late to the party, but we're dressed to kill.
Right, and with us is our friend. You're going to talk
about. Who are you?
Well, yeah, what's going on here?
I am Michael Weinberg, and I am the lawyer at Shapeways, and I'm on the board of the Open Source Hardware Association. And I happened to be in this room when you guys started, so I just sort of decided to drift in and do a little show.
You drift in once in a while,
yeah,
like with the waves.
We found you trying to 3D scan something outside, and we're like, stop that. Wait, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not.
Oh, let's discuss.
If only you had a white paper that you'd recently published, which we'll be discussing. So we're broadcasting live from the Adafruit headquarters, where we're Selective Solder Machine is still running right now, and we've got all sorts of cool electronics and equipment and manufacturing and design going on here. This is pure live entertainment. It can't get more exciting than this.
Amazing in
wow.
here.
This is like a candy factory for engineers. Don't eat though.
And candy. Lawyers who hang out with engineers.
Right. This is I'm sure. Yeah. He's always trying to convince me to like commit crime so he can defend me. Can you be an example case? Oh, lawyers. So we got an exciting
your
show.
code name is Test Case.
We've got an exciting show for you tonight. What's on tonight's show?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. All right. On tonight's show, the code is scanners. If you've seen that 80s movie with the head exploding. That's not why the code is scanners, but anyways.
Maybe it is. Stick around.
Yeah.
I liked it when people painted.
Their thoughts can kill. 10 seconds,
like
the pain
CGI.
begins. 15 seconds, you can't breathe. 20 seconds, you explode. Scanners. Anyways, you get 10% off in the Adafruit store.
I like how it's like 20 seconds. Like they're like, you don't have attention span for more
We have
than
good technology. It's just not great technology.
They should really talk to the guy who was on the show and tell, because 20 seconds balloon.
Yeah.
Destruction.
Okay. So that's the code, 10% off all the way up to 11:59 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Show and tell. Lydia is going to talk about folks who came on the show and tell, show and shared some projects. Back in the mailbag's going to stop by, read some letters. Made for Jobs board. Time travel. 3D stuff. Lots of 3D stuff tonight. New products. We're going to answer your question. Lydia says there's a top secret product she's going to show in advance. That's kind of cool. And we're going to answer your questions. Oops, I messed up. That's your questions. There's top secret. We'll fix
and then
it
we'll
in
have a
post.
trivia.
And then there's a trivia question. All
it's
that
live
on Ask an Engineer.
Do this live.
Yeah.
All right. Back to us.
Okay. So again, the code scanners, pay some bills. We don't have loans or venture capital, so we actually rely on people placing orders. So. Kind of do
it's an old-fashioned business like that.
Yeah, it's boring. So for the $200 checkout, if you're in the U.S. continental USA, we have free UPS ground, not the crummy SurePost thing that's not really UPS, that you don't really get it. And then in New York right now, actually since the last time you were here, we added this same-day delivery in New York City. So before 11 a.m. if you're in the zip code where we offer same-day. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I was waiting like 2-3 days for packages from you guys.
No more.
Like a chump.
You don't have to wait anymore.
That's amazing.
And so...
that's actually kind of dangerous though.
It is.
That's like an impulse control problem.
It is, and a lot of advertising agencies use it, a lot of production companies.
Oh yeah.
Full on panic. A lot of panic, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. And one of the reasons we did it is because they're like, we're in New York, we want to combine now and get 5 billion neopixels because Iron Man 7 is filming.
Right.
We're like, you can't do that. So now they can at least order it and get it.
Right, now we can like get it to you.
Yep.
Yeah, they're still going to freak out later.
Oh yeah.
But now they'll at least have the stuff, then freak out.
Yeah. Like you've done your part.
Delayed it by 4 hours.
And programming, this is Ask an Engineer every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and Show and Tell is every Wednesday at 7:30. Adafruit live shows this week. On Thursdays we have Layer by Layer, and this new one, Pedro's 3D printing segment. We also have video that's coming up. And then this week on Desk of Lady Ada, we only did one this week, Lady Ada.
But it was awesome.
You did.
It was an hour long.
So Michael knows about them. So Bunny, I think besides like Lemoore, Bunny's probably additionally a high-profile open source.
Bunny's speech at the first Open Hardware Summit explaining why open hardware was important, like completely changed my view and understanding.
Yeah,
it
and that was
completely blew my mind.
That was almost.
You thought it was total bullshit, but then
No.
And that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. It was just like that all makes it just like knit everything together. It's amazing.
So Bunny is an open source hardware pioneer. Everything he does his best to release it. He did Chumby, which was a Wi-Fi beanbag computer before there was even an iPhone, really ahead. And so one of the things he recently did was a crowd supply campaign where he made a book. And this is like Oprah Book Club. So you spent an hour reviewing this book.
Yeah, I went through every page and I showed it off. So
Yeah.
people, if you want to see what it is inside of it before you purchase,
Yeah, and
you can check that out.
What I thought we'd do is show his video. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds for the crowd supply campaign.
Yeah, and I can flip through it really fast. if you
Yeah,
want
we'll
to.
do that. And I thought that'd be neat because you can, one of the things that's cool about crowd supply, it's a crowdfunding platform, but you can purchase the things after they deliver them.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll also have them in the Adafruit store.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm gonna play this video.
Take it away, Bunny.
Shenzhen is an amazing place. It's really the center of the hardware and manufacturing universe right now. I spend a lot of time there sourcing components for my own projects. I've also introduced a lot of people to Shenzhen. For a lot of people, their first trip can be intimidating, but it's actually quite manageable if you're armed with the right information. That's why I created the Essential Guide to Electronics in Shenzhen. I wrote the guide specifically to help non-Mandarin speakers navigate the electronics markets. The book is made for hardware engineers and hackers like me who want to use electronics markets to source parts but struggle with the language barrier. Everything is presented in a point-to-translate format, so you don't need to know anything about written or spoken Chinese to use it. Most of the guide is dedicated to things like components, tooling, and how to negotiate with vendors. The guide also helps you get to and from the markets and includes a few survival phrases to help you out in a pinch. Its detailed treatment of the electronics market is a perfect complement to general travel guides. The guide covers everything from diodes and displays to injection molding and pricing. It's everything you need to find, evaluate, and purchase parts in the Shenzhen electronics market. There are also multiple copies of tear-out maps and ample space for note-taking, so you can remember the locations of vendors and share your findings with friends. Thanks, and happy hacking!
All right, so here's a couple photos from Bunny's updates. I like that he was able to show the process, very Bunny style.
And this is the plate for the cover, yeah.
And you know, the story about the book is as interesting as the book itself. And here's Bunny. I think it's one of the first copies.
He's going to make another book about how to talk to publishers about making books.
Yeah. So do you want to show this on the open?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So this is a really lovely lay flat book. Sorry, I will reach over here and I will lock this. And what's cool about it is, you know, he talks a little bit about like how you do business in China and how you get the quality you want and things to watch out for. And then the majority of it is a point to translate guide. So for example, if you're buying resistors, you'd be sitting with the salesperson and you'd say something like, okay, well, I want to get resistors. And then you say, okay, I need the tolerance to be 1%. And then I need the wattage to be 1/4 watt. And then if you have a question like what's the composition, then they would be able to point to what they read in Mandarin, and then you would be able to read the text above. So it's like both parties can communicate by pointing at the sections that regard the question. So you'll, you know, even if you don't know any Mandarin, you can still communicate, you know, basically with them about a lot of electronic components. And what's neat is, like, this is clearly like definitely written by an engineer. So like, you know, it isn't just like, there's sections for like how to get a taxi and how to like ask where the restroom is. But, you know, there's also like how to specify short versus long leads or surface mount, LED color and what kind of lens you want. And then, you know, all sorts of different displays and quality and like also neat things. Like I didn't know that when you buy displays at the counter, they'll be able to help you test the panel. So this is something that you can point to, and then so like I didn't even know this was possible, but because it's on here, you can ask for it. And then just like every sort of component and part, and then tools, and then this is kind of neat, like negotiating. So if you have a sample, because you'll always get a sample from the factory, and if you're lucky, the sample is exactly what you want, because then you just say, okay, make exactly this. But oftentimes a sample will be like a different color or a different material or a different size. Like oftentimes I'll tell a factory, okay, well I really like the speaker, but I want you to solder wires onto it, and I want the wires to be 24 gauge, and I want them to have an end to them. So you'll get a motor, but then you want a custom cable, or you'll get a display, but you want like a custom bezel. And so this will help you identify, like, okay, I want it tape and reel, or I want it surface mount. So this is just like all these things that I've had to learn from dealing with.
This is mandatory reading
Chinese
for
sellers.
anyone who decides to get into hardware, because if they don't know about this and they don't know about Bunny, they're going to be freaking out later trying to find someone like Bunny or a resource like this. The other thing is a parent was watching Desk of Lady Ada during Lamore's review of this, and he said, my kid wants to make a video game based on this because this is like a map, it's an RPG. And it's
Totally.
like, it's the key to like
capitalism, the video game.
Yeah, and it's neat. And I think on a cultural level, this is teaching people how to communicate with another group of people who have a shared goal, which is maybe a hardware project or whatever. And it's like you were saying, there's no malicious intent. When you say, I want this wire, if you don't ask for specific things, you're not going to get specific
If you
things.
ask for a USB cable, you're going to get the cheapest USB, and you say,
Yeah.
I want the cheapest USB cable, you will get a really
You'll actually get the
crappy
cheapest
USB cable. You'll get the
yeah.
cheapest USB cable, but it won't have data lines. And then it's like, well, like people say, like I got ripped off because I bought a USB cable and didn't have data wires. It's like, well, you didn't specify that you needed data wires. Or they'll say, but the wires are 30 gauge, and like that's ridiculous. Like anybody reasonable would ask for 24 gauge. It's like, well, you didn't ask for it. If you don't ask specifically for the specifications you want, and everything has to be specified, you will get the lowest cost thing, because makers always go in and they say, well, I want the cheapest.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if you're asking for the cheapest battery, they're going to be used. They're going to be recycled batteries. They're going to be recycled displays.
Yeah.
You're not going to, or you're going to get stuff that is maybe doesn't pass tests.
Yeah.
But because you didn't specify what you need. You can get really high quality and get really cheap, and you get what you pay for. So knowing how to negotiate that is really important. And I like how there's a whole section about like SIM cards, because I see this trip up people. They end up like in China, because they go from Hong Kong to China, and they don't realize like you can't necessarily use a SIM card from one place, and like there's like a whole system, which is actually funny. Like when we make our Phona modules, like I test them with the 2G modules here, but if I was ever going to make something that had cellular connectivity in China, I don't even understand like how I would do that, because like how would you get the SIM to test with? It's probably totally different than how American SIMs authenticate. And then of course it has some travel and
kind of
management, and there's a lot about how to get into Shenzhen, because this is like getting a visa, getting across the border, doing the immigration process. It's not hard, but you need to know how to do it, because you don't want to get stuck in the wrong border crossing. And then there's some maps, and so this is like the map of the area, and so you get 20 pages of basically the identical map, and then each one comes with the 2 pockets, so you can put the business card of the seller, because the business card will have everything. Will have their name, their QQ, their WeChat, their location, their email, maybe a little bit about the company, their website, which is like always a bunch of numbers. You're like never going to remember it. And then it has a place to put receipts or other documents. And then the seller, you can write your notes about like, okay, this is really awesome LED strip vendor, and then they mark where they are so you can come by and see them again. So point to, please mark your stall on this map, and they'll do that. So it's kind of neat. Anyways, an awesome book. I'm really glad I got 2 copies.
Okay. All right, and that was
Okay, so it's my mini review.
That was your mini review.
It was awesome.
All right.
But it's all Bunny. I didn't do a thing.
Yeah.
I'm just showing how cool Bunny is.
Other live shows this week, just Tony D. I'm going to just go over these real quick. Be sure to watch them. The Larson Scanner Raspberry Pi Quick Look at Node-RED, and the Raspberry Pi SQLite Sensor. Check these out. from learning Pi stuff all the way to something like a Larson scanner. That's what shows this week. We are filming another pseudorandom. We had keyboards. We had mice. We did a retro mice show. That was kind of fun.
Nice.
We had color organ. What else did we have? We had the DIY component.
DIY components.
Yeah, we had Arduino.
We had. Did we actually just? Yeah, DIY components we did. We also did another music one where it's like light to sound.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing cryptocurrency soon. So look for it. Okay.
Nice.
Lady Ada, can you do show and tell really fast?
I'll do it really fast. Okay, we start off with Noah and Pedro, who had a preview of this week's video, which is going to be a first-person video display that snaps onto a racing drone controller, so you can make your own, or you can watch another person's first-person display. Tony DiCola is on vacay. He'll be back next week. Charles Crawford did some awesome science experiments. He first off had an enable hand. He's been doing a lot of cool 3D printing to make prosthetic hands. He's also working on making a flexi hand with components embedded in it. And then he did a really cool demo of a future robo-arm that he's going to be making with a laser that pops black balloons. And he totally popped the heck out of some balloons. So watch that video. He had safety glasses, which is really important. Lon is promoting a Dusk Till Dawn Northern Spark. Sounds like a pre-burn or a local burn. If you are interested, check that out. It's called Northern Spark. And he also showed a really good way to get started into cosplay. He made cosplay for a little bird called Pepe in World of Warcraft. I have not played World of Warcraft, so I don't know the character, but it looks really cute, like a little owl bird. And he made a little set of armor, and he's actually twitching. So if you're on Twitch, check out Lon Koenig, LonKoening, and you can watch him do cosplay armor. And he said it's a really good way to get started because it's only a couple bucks. Like the doll is this big, so if you mess up, it's not like, you know, a huge human-bodied armor set. You're practicing on a small thing, but you still get a really adorable character with armor and a little sword, a little cute, deadly owl. Watch out. Scott showed off a quad controller and talked about how you use pitch, roll, and yaw to control your quadcopter. It's like it's a 2-minute quadcopter educational mission that he's got going on every week. Richard A., we couldn't hear him, but he is doing some sort of circuit playground audio display that's going to be embedded in a knit glass outfit. It's like knitted glass, and it's like a dress, and it was like really cool looking, and I have no idea what it's for, but he's always got really cool costuming going on. Les came by and also is working on an Enable hand project. He's adding cloud control, so you can have a Wi-Fi controlled arm so that you can maybe send commands or have your like robotic arm do stuff for you and connect to the internet or maybe connect to your tablet or your phone. Carl has an epic weather station that he built. He started with a Pi TFT, but he couldn't stop himself, and he made like a Philips Hue Lux plus indoor plus outdoor sensing Shield Arduino with a Raspberry Pi and a 7-inch touch display. It's crazy. And then check it out, it's super cool looking. And then C. Scott has a CPU replacement board for the 8048, and he's running the Chrominius Kickstarter. So if you would like an analog synth, I am not making analog synths right now, so you cannot get one from me. Go to the Chrominius Kickstarter and get one of his awesome synths. He's been doing electronics for 30 years. We told him that he was being way too responsible by designing and quoting things ahead of time. So
he'll actually ship this.
He will actually ship this, unlike some other people, perhaps.
All right, all participants on the show and tell get it as seen on the show and tell sticker. All they have to do is email support@adafruit.com. And if you want to be on the show and tell, just go to google.com/plus Adafruit, and you'll see the show and tell link 7:30 Eastern time on Wednesdays. Okay, back to mailbag. This is Packet. Hello. We read these emails from you to our company meeting that we have each week called State of the Fruit, and this is from Kurt. I have to honestly thank you guys for the service. When I realized my mistake, I had already accepted the errors of my ways. The first request I did send you was more of a stab in the dark. Never had I imagined that you guys would go to this length, considering my credit card expired as well, to help me out. In any case, you guys should be proud because of this level of commitment is something I've yet to see from anyone else. Poor Kurt, he sounds like he had a
That was a rough night.
pretty rough life, but I'm glad we were
Yay.
able to help him out. Okay, Adafruit's jobs board. This is where makers post their skills and cool companies post up what they're looking for. This one is from a maker this week. We've been doing a bunch of companies. This is Ankur from India. Very good experience in embedded and robotics. Worked on various controllers, boards, and modules. ARM, Atmel, Microchip, ST microcontrollers, TI, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, RF modules, GSM, GPS, Bluetooth, various tilt sensors. If you have an idea, Ankur can make it.
That's cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like electronics ninja for hire. That's like everything interesting.
All right.
I hope somebody says, I want you to make a project with an Arduino Raspberry Pi with GSM. Somebody emailed us today with like a project idea and it had like all of this stuff in it. There's an Arduino shield that also had
Everything you
GPS,
have.
GSM, Bluetooth.
There was a dark time in like open source hardware where there was everything was kind of starting out. So there was some companies, people, whatever, and they're just like, well, I know, we'll just put all of the boards. So it was like a Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone, propeller, parallax, and it was just a monster. Like, it was on a
Put me out
Galapagos
of my
island, so it was
misery.
able to evolve on its own. And it's like, why doesn't anyone like it? It does everything. It's like, no one likes it. It does everything. So you need like 8 compilers to run it. But it was a dark time. Anyways, so on to open source. Speaking of open source hardware,
Speaking of monsters.
I get to not use this logo soon. So welcome aboard. So we're going to do a little bit of open source hardware news.
Yeah.
And then you're here, and you're all about open source hardware because you're the president of the board of
Yes.
the Open Source Hardware Association.
I am.
I totally got that right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't have got that right.
Yeah. So
I'm some guy.
Yeah.
You should be his PR agent.
So first up in open source hardware news, this is kind of historic. You can't say that right now because right now there's a bunch of historic things. But
Everything is historic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
right.
kind of historic. Aya, who is the founder and CEO of LittleBits, an open source hardware company,
And she was
is on the cover of Wired
And she
UK.
was a member of the open source, not now, but she was a member of open source
And
hardware.
She co-founded the
Precedent.
the summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in case people are wondering if open source hardware works, there's now, can you hand me
Yes, sir.
that one? Okay, so this is, we stopped by and we got 3 copies, and then hand me, oh wait, there's one that I can't, there's one
Like a
that
presentation to roll
Yeah,
out.
and then, so here's Lady Ada, and here's Aya. So doing open source hardware works. You can, it can be a good business, a good cause, and if you're looking for fame and fortune, it's okay. The fame part happened a little bit. That was a little weird that week. That was weird.
10% off everything in the
Yeah.
Adafruit store.
Yeah. So I wanted to also mention that this isn't the first time that there was open source
That's so
hardware
great.
pioneers. Wired Italy had Massimo.
Yeah, that's cool.
Wired US had multiple covers, and one of the covers was Megan Smith, who has been someone who has promoted open source hardware. She's now the CTO of the USA.
A country you may have heard of.
Yeah, a little tiny country. This is Wired UK. They put the Raspberry Pi, debate about if it's open source hardware or not, whatever. People can argue about that on mailing lists. However, there's a lot of open source software, obviously, that goes along with the
Yes.
Raspberry Pi.
That at
So-
least is true.
So, when you start to put all this together, it looks like a little bit of a movement. There was a 3D printing one. Here's Bree. MakerBot was open source at one time.
I think at the time this was published, maybe
Yeah,
it
probably
was.
was.
Yeah, and so it's on newsstands if your newsstand has Wired UK.
Check out,
And-
usually every city has an international
Yeah. And now I
newspaper
have
site.
2 favorite Wired covers. These are my 2 favorite ones.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is a movement. So Aya helped start OSHWA,
Yeah.
an open source hardware summit, and that's what we're here talking about. What is OSHWA, and what do you do there?
So OSHWA is the volunteer organization, the organization that's kind of designed to be a home and a meeting place for people who are passionate about open source hardware. And it's also designed to kind of help codify community-driven norms. Because a lot of people say, oh, I heard about open source hardware. like, what is it? What can I learn more about it? And
When you say community-driven norms, what's an example of
so like the open source hardware definition, right? The open source hardware definition, it lives there, and it was, there was a process to generate it, but it was sort of designed to be the place where you could say, okay, there's a community of people around open source hardware who are interested in it, and this is something that they are kind of consensus-driven, interested in, and saying, okay, this is it. This is a resource. You can find this. There's a lot of best practices there. So if you say, hey, I want to do open source hardware, and
what does that mean?
I want to know like how to do this stuff.
Can I still do open source hardware if I use Altium? That's a common question.
And so
Moore and I were on. It was what you would categorize as like a giant open source mailing list nerd fight. In a good way. For months and months and months. And what was neat was the process. Eventually,
they made a decision.
An open source hardware definition came out of it.
Decision.
And it was neat because we did get to a place where, as long as you publish the file with the tool that you used, okay, like yes, it'd be great if you use an open source tool in addition, but that's going to not allow open source hardware to move forward.
Some people said, what if there's the chip firmware you make live, but the bootloader isn't open source? Does that count? Is schematics good enough? You have to publish board file. I mean, there's like a lot. It sounds like
if you publish a schematic as a PDF, is that okay?
Right. Or does it have to be in the original format?
Or does it have to be PNG or SVG? And so there was a big spectrum. What was interesting, there have been people that have said, Lady Ada, you use Windows, so you'll never be open source.
I have people say EagleCAD is not open source,
and it isn't, but what you do is you publish the file in the format that you made it with. So it was interesting to kind of watch like what gets us like really close, and then what can we move towards down the road. And then Eagle, during this whole process, updated Eagle so you can export as XML. And then
the default saving is now all XML. So they actually had a binary format, and while we were talking about this, everyone was like, well, we use Eagle, but wouldn't it be really, it's a commercial tool, but if it exported to a text format that was readable, then that would solve a lot of problems.
That's a community norm. That's not like a law. It's just like, this is the best practice kind of.
And it's only worth as much as the community cares about it, and that it's really consensus driven, right? Because Oshawa can come out and say, here are the laws of open source hardware, and if everyone in the open source hardware community says, well, no, that's wrong, then it's like, well, who cares? It only matters to the extent that it's derived from the community and it feels like it's a consensus from the community.
And you're president of the board. How long have you been doing this?
I am, I think, like a year and a half in to a 2-year term. So it was a 1-year term, and then I got reelected, so I'm halfway through the second term.
And what's the difference between, I always think it's neat, the structural stuff. What's the difference between the board and then the people that are running the day-to-day? Like or is it all the same?
It's mostly the same. I mean, Oshawa is, like I said, it's a volunteer-driven organization, and it's mostly the people who are doing operations are mostly the board. There are a couple of people who do great web stuff for us, or who are doing a little bit of logistics, but it's mostly the board.
The board does the day-to-day.
The board does a lot of the day-to-day.
Yeah.
I mean, Alicia, who's the president of Oshawa, does like a lot of the day-to-day, and then for the summit,
that's an event, so you have like an event staff?
Right. Well, no. So we do have an event staff, but the person who's in charge of the summit chair is Addie, and she is also on the board.
Okay.
And so
you're busy.
The board is busy, and they're basically volunteering to do it because they think it's important to have these events and put it together.
All right. And so my next question, which you kind of started to talk about, what is the Open Source Hardware Summit, when and where?
So the Open Source Hardware Summit it's like one of I do a lot of events in a year, but this is one of my favorite events.
Yay!
This year it's in Portland, in Oregon, and it's October 7th. And basically, hardware is, you need to see it in person, right? You need to go. And so you go to the summit, and there are demos, there are talks, and you can just meet the people who are doing this day in and day out. And really it's a day for the community to come together and just sort of experience hardware in the flesh. And all these people who are all over the world, they get this chance to come together and see what other people are doing, and like not just see it on the internet or just hear about it, but like see it in person and touch it and ask questions and just hang out.
I love going there, seeing the demos, like biohacking projects and like the wire benders and like all sorts of cool I don't want to say fringe because they're not fringe, but like, not just breakout boards, not just Arduino clones, people doing unique and different
applications, right?
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
think one year there was a bunch of interest in open source farming equipment. That was kind of cool.
Yeah,
Because like that makes a lot of sense.
Right. You build that infrastructure of stuff that's all open, and you can reconstruct society if you needed to.
So as far as the event itself, is the schedule firmed up? Is it done? Can people submit talks?
We're still looking for talks. So if you want to talk, if you have something awesome you want to show off,
What are you looking for? Is there anything?
we're looking for interesting stuff. Like if you have a project, if you have an idea, if you have a process, just anything connected to open source hardware that you think the community would benefit from hearing
Waz
about.
did a process talk, and she just talked about how you determine like yield and scheduling and like things to watch out for when manufacturing hardware, and people loved it.
People loved it, yeah, because I mean, there's people talk about great projects, obviously. So there are all these great projects, but then there's the nuts and bolts of, if you want hardware,
How do you manage a bomb?
This is like Bunny's book, right? How do you actually get this thing made? And so
BOM, B-O-M.
Yes,
Bill of
BOM,
materials.
yes.
Gotta watch out now.
I did not. There's no bomb.
So if I said,
Set us up. I did bomb at BOM. Yeah.
if I wanted to do a talk about moving our nation towards open source voting machines, because there's probably going to be an election at some point this year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
And wouldn't it be great? Because every time there's an election, the controversy is, well, these are really old machines and they don't work, and the computerized ones are even worse,
right?
Because they can
they're
be
not
hacked.
secure. They're not be hacked.
So if they were all open source and everything was published and inspectable, then the companies that were making it would just be bidding who can make it the best, lowest cost or best service.
Yeah.
And who cares about the design once it's validated? It's just delivered.
Right.
And then it can be verified.
Right.
Because that seems like that'd be a nice investment. And anyone at any point could say, well, here's how it's vulnerable. And
Right.
it would be
Let's upgrade.
fixed.
Let's fix
so
it.
that would be a talk.
That would be amazing.
Okay. I'm not going to do that talk. But it's an idea for
Right.
folks
But
out
maybe
there.
you will do the talk.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like one, and it can be a topic idea like that. It doesn't have to be like, here's my project.
No.
Okay.
It's just something, if it is of interest to the community, I really encourage people to do it, because we get a huge variety of people who come up and talk, and they're just doing amazing things, and they say, oh, maybe someone might care about this.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And the
everyone
crowd is
cares
super
about it.
cool. If this is your first time talking at an event, this is a really good place to have your first time talk. I know a lot of people who have never spoken before at an event because it's really scary. But the Open Source Hardware Summit is friendly. Everybody's really nice. The crowds aren't too big. It's like super chill.
Yeah.
So there's not like a gigantic auditorium and you're like,
It's a safe place.
It's a safe place.
It's a safe place.
All right, and then I guess the topic that's happening right now, and I had a little video to scroll through, is you recently did a call for logos.
Yes.
For open source hardware.
Yes.
So maybe these are some of the entries that came in, and I'll go to the one that I believe was just recently selected.
Yeah.
But here's some of them. I like a lot of them.
I like a lot of them too.
I like the ones with sparkles.
Well, so there's obviously a Ashwa logo.
Yes.
But that's for the association.
And there's an open source hardware
And
logo.
there's an open source hardware logo, which I know about. I can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
But then you said, okay, everybody, we need an open source hardware logo.
Right.
Why did you ask for that?
So the idea was
I know you didn't
that,
personally
I
ask,
was like,
but,
you must have the logo. So the idea was that open source hardware doesn't self-validate the way that open source software does, right? So open source software, if you're like, how open is this software? You look at the license, and the license tells you what the deal is, and you can say, okay, well, maybe I think that license is a real open source software license, or maybe I don't. But
And you can argue that forever.
right, yes, and we can
But
have
at
that
least you
argument.
know what it is.
And it's all based on copyright, and everyone agrees that code is copyrightable.
Right.
So that's why you get to dictate what license.
Yeah, the code is
Well, except
completely
Oracle.
wrapped up.
It's going to be Oracle all night tonight.
But so software, like the code is all wrapped up in copyright, and the license, that's all that matters. With hardware, because some of hardware is protected by copyright, but some of hardware isn't protected by copyright, the code isn't as canonical of controlling what it is. And so as a result of that, when people say I'm open source hardware, you can't automatically quickly validate it by just looking at the code. It's not that simple.
It is quite challenging. I've had to dig around for some files at some points. And
So generally speaking, and tell me, I'm going to just try to translate because I know way too much about this stuff. When something's open source hardware, generally the board files are available. So you can send these to like Osh Park.
Yeah.
And then you get the thing back.
Right.
That's easy for PCBs.
Yeah, that's one part of it. The next part is the code that you need for it is under an open source software license.
Sure.
Yay. And then the other one is there is a schematic in some format that a human can read to say, oh, this is how it works.
Right.
So generally, like that's when people start saying, okay, this is probably open source hardware. But as Lamar and I know, that might not be true.
Right.
It gets complicated. What if part of the firmware is open source? What if you're linking to a library that isn't, which you get all the open source complexities? And then with hardware, what if you're using a module that also has a microcontroller in it, but that code is an open source? So for example, Bluetooth, to get access to the Bluetooth Classic API, you have to sign an NDA. There is no open source Bluetooth Classic API out there. It does not exist because it's owned by CSR and it's completely under NDA. So can you make anything with Bluetooth Classic that is open source? Does that even really exist? And also,
maybe the hardware you can, but that part that pops on might not. So,
this is hard to
at some point you're
argue.
like, okay, if a community validates something as open source hardware, why wouldn't you just use the gear logo?
Right. And so the idea was
what's wrong with this logo?
if something is certified open source, then
why wouldn't you slap that on?
show a way to do it.
There it is. You're open source. You're done.
The reason for that.
This is open
Yeah,
source.
no, it's right there.
It's right there.
It's great. So I think.
But-
Look, actually, we have a product with a So this, what are you saying? This is not right.
So I think actually there are actually two reasons. I think one is that logo is out in the community and no one really controls it, and so anybody can put it on anything, and there's no way to really validate whether it works or not. The other reason is because there's been a little bit of a trademark kerfuffle in the past.
Yeah, do you want me to do that one real fast?
Yeah, do you want to do it?
I can do it really fast.
You have deep cuts on this, so
This
yeah,
is
do it.
crazy. Okay, so
Drop the beat.
So back in 1999, I wrote a book called Flash Enabled, and I made a logo, and it was this little keyhole looking thing, this blue thing, and I had it on my site, and you can look at it on the Wayback Machine. And then in 2006, the Open Source Initiative basically used the logo.
Right.
I talked to someone there and oh yeah, sorry, oops. And
once you're talking, we thought your logo was
they
cool.
changed it to green.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's no big deal. And then 2011, the open source hardware community made a gear, and they kind of put it on top of the OSI logo.
Right.
And
it's cool.
And then eventually, someone at OSI got mad and said, you can't use this logo on hardware. And they were arguing a bunch, and I completely forgot about this logo I made. I was part of this.
Yeah.
And it hit me one day, I'm like, why is this all so familiar? Because this is a really long time ago.
Yeah, right.
And so I hit the Wayback Machine. I'm
Also, it was like the .com era. You were probably having parties, and you were
yeah, it was a bad scene.
Live casting.
So I said, hey, here's this logo, and I had correspondence and everything.
Yeah, right.
And the former president of OSI was from Red Hat, and we talked, and I had an email exchange. And anyways, they did a coexistence agreement.
Yeah.
But that's just that no one's going to sue anyone. It still doesn't give any ability for the average person to use this gear logo in any way.
Right.
So anyways.
It's tough for you to grant a license. Yeah.
So
and certainly not for a certification.
Yeah, so this nerd fight that I'm going to do again, the nerd fight that was going on stopped when I'm like, hey, by the way, that was my logo.
Right.
And it was so weird because I was in the middle of it saying, why is everyone fighting?
Right.
And then I remembered that I designed a logo 10 years before.
And that was super. I think you dropped an Wayback Machine link, and
it was over.
And the mailing list got like super quiet for a day. You can tell like everyone's talking to their lawyers.
Yeah. So anyways,
once again,
so
archive.org.
So
thank you so much, archive.org.
So basically, and I'll translate. There's no way this gear logo is ownable and assignable by any organization, because there was just like OSI won't sue Oshawa. Oshawa will only use it this way. So it means like no one can do anything with it ever.
Plus, it's totally out in the rightly so, totally out in the community. And so so if we said so going back, the problem is that when someone says this is open source hardware, it's hard to tell if their open source hardware is your open source hardware.
Yeah.
Right. Like their definition is your definition. So what we said is, okay, well, what if Oshawa had this certification? And if you have a project, if you have a piece of hardware and you want to say that it's open source hardware Oshawa certified, then you can go through this process and self-certify and sign up on the website, and then you can use this logo.
This is it.
Wow.
That says if you see this logo on hardware, that means that the version of open source hardware that they're using is the Oshawa version. And if that's the version that you're into, then you kind of have like this validation. It's easy. You don't have to track down files and check out their website and do all this stuff. You can look at the logo, and then you can also use the code to just look up all those links if you want to chase them down.
Oh, and they would actually register the links in the
Where
files.
would they register that code?
Exactly. So when we fully reveal and open this thing up at the summit, I know.
This isn't the reveal?
This is the reveal of the
This is the
of
preview.
the logo, but we're going to open everything up.
This is the trailer.
Yeah. We're getting all of our ducks in a row. But at the summit, we're going to turn the whole thing on, and so you can go to the site and you can sign up. But when you register, one of the things you need to do is provide links to all the stuff that you're saying you're providing to people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it'll be a database, and so you can go in and say, okay, well this is the hardware that I have this code on it. You can type it in, and then you can see all the links to all the resources. And so not only do you know that their version of open source hardware is your version, but actually you can have a way to actually track down all that stuff.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
This is good. I'll say this. This is a huge pain in the ass. So thank you for doing this. No, it is. It is because now you're doing a logo contest.
Yeah.
And then like...
Now you have to have this database forever.
And here's so Lamar and I are very focused on running Adafruit and doing open source hardware.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get really far in open source community because like once in a while someone comes in like, by the way, nothing's open source, you use Windows. Like, oh, you have to like every week there's another like, hey, like we had this conversation before.
Well, the capacitor is an open source.
You didn't make your own capacitors. Like, okay. So I know it's really hard. So thanks for doing it.
Well, no.
I have no idea what's going to happen, but thanks for getting out there.
I mean, look, it is like everything else. It only matters if it's useful to the community.
Yeah.
If people like it, then great, and we're happy to do it. If people say this is worthless, then we'll try and do it again.
Yeah,
and I think it's useful for people.
What I like is there was always talk of this, but no one committed to actually getting it done. Like you have to be able to trademark this mark to assign it out for it to have teeth. If someone uses it and it's not really open source, like I don't know if that'll happen. But there was a question. Is there a list of the requirements for releasing the board schematics? Is that going to be part of the review?
Yeah, so if you go to oshawa.org, you can see the announcement it's on the front page. You can see the announcement of the kind of concept document of what you have to do. One of the things that we're doing right now, which is one of the reasons why it's taken time to do it, is we're turning that into an actual legal license. The Stanford IP Clinic is doing a lot of actual legal work for us.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
turning
Stanford.
it into a totally readable, accessible license. And so in that license, it will say, here's what you really need to do.
What will it be like? What license?
The license will just be, it won't be like a license like an open source.
It'll be for
hardware license.
licensing the logo.
It'll be for licensing the logo. It'll be the
Yeah.
requirements. And what it basically says is you have to comply with the open source hardware definition. And one of the big sticking points during the process was this sort of what is open, what is not open.
Yeah.
And the rule of thumb that we settled on that I really like is your contribution has to be open.
Yeah.
So if you are taking a bunch of closed components and arranging them in a way, then all the arranging that you do...
The creative part that people say is the
But
creative
there's an
input.
NDA for the Bluetooth Classic stack. You don't have control over it. This happened with Bunny because like someone's like, your laptop isn't open source. It's like 99.99. He's like, they won't.
The
give
FPGA
me,
boot
Right.
code,
Yeah.
you might,
Yeah.
Right, and so to the extent that it's in your control, you have to open it up. If it's not in your control, it's not your obligation to open it up because it's just impossible. And there's a preference for using components and things that are open, but it's not an absolute requirement because that just closes so many doors.
Yeah, I like that approach because there is a like Stallman-esque thing where it just turns into like a puzzle. Like, well, what if your pacemaker had firmware that you can?
And that's a fun debate to have, but it's just not one.
No, but that's it. It just turns into every edge case.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
Okay, if there's a pacemaker in Stallman, we'll give him the code. Like, can we just solve it that way?
Right.
Like here, whatever you want. So okay. So that's it for Oshawa and Open Source Hardware Summit and what you're doing. If folks want to learn more or do more, because we're going to
Oshawa.org is the best place to go.
Okay.
And so on there, the entire process was open. We put all these questions out to the community, so you can trace the last year and a half worth of community development, and then that's where we're going to be posting all the announcements as they come up. And then at the summit, come to the summit.
You can't nerd fight about it because the nerd fight already happened.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to skip everything because we're going to go into the 3D stuff. We're going to talk about the paper.
Yeah, do you want to skip new products? Just do it next week?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, great.
That's what we're going to do.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
So yeah, we only have a few anyways.
I didn't put that
We have
in.
to. We're going to throw away these. This has this shitty old logo. Look at this old.
That's annoying Pedro.
Look at
It's like
this
first
terrible
PCB.
logo. We need this logo now.
We'll add it to
this
to
one?
things.
No one can own that one.
Maybe we'll
do
add it
both.
to the
Okay,
They can
barcodes.
coexist.
Anyways,
yeah, that
we'll
way-
move on
okay.
to we'll move on to the 3D stuff. But I just
Yeah.
did want to congratulate Lady Ada and everyone at Adafruit, Tyler, Justin, whole team. Congratulations! It is 1,000 tutorials on learn.adafruit.com.
1,000 tutorials.
I love these tutorials. They're so helpful for me.
1,000. Yeah, and
Thank you.
and they're like real tutorials too. It isn't like when you got that 68-in-1 video game cart, but it's like really was just Super Mario Brothers and then like Puzzle Bobble and then
Puzzle Bobble
And, like,
2.
and then Puzzle Bobble 2, and then they just changed like
Turn
the
the screen
colors.
green, the
Yeah,
game.
they totally like they just started doing it at level 2.
Puzzle Bobble, and they just put a bow on Puzzle Bobble.
Exactly. So this is for real. This is 1,000 tutorials. About 250 of them are product tutorials, getting you started with the product, which is in and of itself very useful because it gets people started real fast. But the other 750 are everything from Firewalker sneakers to 3D printed game girls to how to use XBs to how to make these projects from this week, which is a 3.5-inch Pi TFT Octoprint rig, so you can make a little adorable Raspberry Pi with a display to control
Oh no, we're skipping this.
your Octoprint thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're skipping it. I just wanted to let everyone know.
NPR radios,
All this stuff.
Adafruit IO
Here's
tutorials.
a little tiny snippet of a video that things light up. There's probably music, but we're just going to keep moving.
Can we at least see it light up?
Yeah, we're going to watch it light up.
Okay.
Can't walk away before that.
No, we're committed.
Ah, look
There
at
it
that.
Okay, so tune in next week. We'll do new products. We only have a few this week anyway, so that's fine.
Okay, let's skip it.
Your other job is Shapeways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people send files and then they get their stuff.
3D printed, or they open up a shop, and then other people come and buy their stuff.
They can upload their files and then you print it out and send it out. Kind of like a Etsy on demand.
Like an Etsy on demand.
And what's neat is
Yeah.
you can get like all sorts of
Uber.
materials. So like we have, metal keychains that we 3D print in plastic, but then like you can't put on your keychain; it'll just get destroyed. But Shapeways will print in all sorts
Yeah.
of. It's like brass or I don't know how the heck that's even done.
Lasers.
But
Lasers.
my big question
Sintering,
is,
laser sintering.
My big question is, there's 3D scanners out now.
Yeah.
And when I go to Disneyland, I want to scan Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
And then I want to upload it to Shapeways.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to sell Mickey Mouse scans.
Yeah.
I want to go to a Dead Mouse concert and scan his head
So,
and get everybody angry.
so I guess my big question is there a paper or has anyone spent time thinking about 3D scanning?
Man, I'm so glad you asked that question.
10% off tonight, Code Scanners. But has anyone
10%
thought about
off.
is there a copyright? Who owns a 3D scan when you scan
Right.
something?
Yeah. And the answer is no one.
Really?
So
This is surprising.
And but this is really important. Is you have to make a distinction between the thing that's being scanned and the scan file. But the
Okay.
scan file, nobody owns it.
Okay, so you have a paper, and I have a table. of
We were
contents
just
if
reading technology.
Yeah,
That'd be kind of
but
awkward.
people can.
Yeah, right. It's like on the internet.
Yeah, so it's a PDF, and it has a bunch of sections. So let me get this straight. So you get a 3D scanner,
Yeah.
and you go to Chicago, and you 3D scan that bean.
Yeah.
Okay, so that scan that I have on my phone,
Yeah.
the data,
Right.
You're saying that you can't copyright that data.
That's right.
Really?
That's right. So if
Because
you
like
go
a
to
photo, you can.
Yeah, exactly. But like a photo you can.
This isn't a photo.
But a scan you cannot. And that's the difference.
Crazy.
So like you think about, you walk up, take a picture of the bean, you have a copyright in that picture.
Yeah, there's debate about the picture. That's a bad example. The bean is a little bad.
Yeah. But so
Yeah, I think the worst thing. I think
so
the worst
the
thing.
easy
What about the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
easy example is stuff that's in the public domain, right? So the Statue of Liberty, not protected by copyright, very old.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't make the Statue of Liberty, believe it or not, if I take a picture of the Statue of Liberty, I own a copyright in my picture. I don't
Okay.
own the Statue of Liberty, but I own a copyright in
Okay,
the
that's
picture.
your picture. You can sell it, license, do whatever you want.
Whatever
It's
you want.
yours.
If I
Lasts a million
scan,
years.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
If for the rest of you, if I scan the Statue of Liberty, I don't own a copyright in that scan file.
Does the person who originally made the object own the copyright?
No, the scan might infringe on their copyright, this is where this gets a little complicated.
Ooh.
Is
but
this
I
what the
know.
paper's about?
And so this is what the paper's about a little
Okay.
bit. And so the easy examples are if the thing being scanned is in the public domain, right? Because then the thing being scanned isn't protected by copyright. Your scan isn't protected by copyright.
It's like a
There's
free-for-all.
just no copyright going on.
Okay.
Once you're scanning things that themselves are protected by copyright, you still have to contend with the copyright in the thing that is being scanned.
Okay, so let's say you after you finish scanning the Statue of Liberty, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that was a good time. So now you're going up to the Guggenheim Museum,
Right.
And you're going to scan that swirly museum.
Yeah.
Who owns the copyright for that scan?
No one owns the copyright in the scan,
But
but the people who own the copyright in the bean's a better example. The scan,
Oh, really?
But because the bean is like the person who owns the copyright in the thing that you scan could prevent you from distributing the thing.
I thought the Guggenheim was
Same
protected. Was it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But it's like, yeah, it
It's
is.
tougher 'cause
It
it's a
is.
public
It's like it's a
building?
building, and so there's all this like weird.
Okay, sorry. So
building
let's go to the most basic one. So you have like a Mickey Mouse.
Yeah,
And
sure.
because that's like they will come after you
Yes,
like crazy.
right.
Or you have a Super
We're not
Mario
even allowed
character.
to talk about it.
You're not- yeah, 'cause-
But we're going to talk about
Ricky
Mickey.
Rouse.
So yeah, let's say if we
You
have
have
a little
a-
Mickey
a
Mouse
statue.
here.
Right.
You scan
and,
it.
I have a 3D scanner.
Yeah.
And I'm scanning Mickey Mouse.
Right.
What's up?
So you've made a copy of Mickey Mouse without permission from Disney. So if you don't have a fair use argument, that copy is infringing the copyright on Mickey Mouse.
So I could take that scan and just print it on my home printer, and no one cares. I'm not selling. I'm not doing anything. That's okay.
You're still violating
still
copyright.
infringing.
But maybe is that more fair use? You're just like playing around, like because I can make a sculpture of.
Yeah, I mean, so
They won't come
yeah.
after me individually. They don't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, so like it depends on all this context stuff. But if you're at home doing this stuff, it is certainly less likely that Disney's lawyers will find you and sue you.
So I'm infringing by just scanning.
Right, because copyright is all about copies.
Okay.
So you make a copy without permission, you're infringing on copyright.
Okay. So I guess the thing that's going to happen is the 3D scanners are going to start to embed
phones.
Disney's IP. So if you try to scan Mickey Mouse, it'll be like, no, you can't. Just like a scanner can't scan money.
Well, I mean, to the extent, but you could make the same argument
Or
that
Photoshop,
phones would be like, you can't take a picture of Mickey.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen
Right,
too.
right.
But I thought you could take a photo of Mickey Mouse, even though you don't own the character. You then own that photo.
Right, you own the photo, and then you would have, if you then got sued by Disney for copyright infringement, which is not going to happen, but if you did, you would then have like a fair use debate with
So like,
Disney.
I was visiting Disney World, and
Right,
I was
so
with
this
my kids.
picture is not infringing and all this
Okay.
stuff. So one of the things that becomes really cool about this, just to kind of like pull it out of the weeds a little bit, is one of the things that this means is that if you think about all this sculpture, all this 3D art from thousands of years ago, Greek sculpture,
Yeah.
Egyptian
Let me
sculpture,
grab this Wikipedia.
all this stuff. This stuff is all in the public domain.
Yeah,
right.
that's all
It's-
safe.
It's all safe, and so as soon as it gets digitized, when somebody scans it, that scan file is just sort of like out in the world too.
And someone can't claim ownership.
Someone's not
You can't
gonna-
say, you can't use my 3D scan.
It can't
So
be like-
some museum owns the head that this is scanned by,
Right.
and somebody did the scan.
Right.
But once I get the file, I can do whatever I want with it because the person cannot say, "Hey, because it's a public domain
Right.
form."
Yeah. And the act of scanning this 3,000-year-old sculpture doesn't all of a sudden like put it back under copyright.
Yeah.
Because you could see a situation, it would be really bad, where if scanning created a new copyright, then all these people who were scanning Greek sculpture, Roman sculpture, Egyptian sculpture, Renaissance sculpture, all of a sudden the stuff that is in part of our cultural heritage would
Yeah.
all of a sudden be locked up by copyright again for another lifetime plus 70 years.
Yeah.
But the lack of copyright protection in the scans means that these things that are in the public domain, they stay in the public domain when they're digitized. And so they can be used as part of everyone's cultural heritage
Yeah.
going forward.
Oh, I get it. It almost like it transfers its status into the scan.
It keeps its status.
Yeah.
What if you took that scan, like let's say like I was like I got this scan of this Nefertiti,
Yeah.
but I was just like a crazy artist, like I was like Syriac, and I just
Vulcan
I
ears.
Yeah.
added Vulcan ears. Maybe I had some cats coming out of here, and like maybe like I gave her spikes and like a huge neck, or like I started modifying it.
Right.
What happens then?
So then it's totally protected by copyright. So this
Ooh.
goes to the reason which is great. Like the reason that scans are not protected is one of the things you need for copyright protection is creativity and originality. And scanning is really hard, but the purpose of scanning is to make as exact a copy as you possibly can. So if you inject your creativity and originality into a 3D scan, you're doing it wrong, usually.
It's not a scan.
It's not a scan.
Yeah.
But
It's an
if you
interpretation.
if you then take that and you add creativity and originality, then copyright should totally protect that. And so it's absolutely protected. And so you can think about it as some types of scans are just designed to digitize things perfectly. Those not protected by copyright. Some types of scans are designed to like make some crazy thing. I mean, there's some examples in the paper of kind of like glitch arty things, which are scans that are intentionally bad.
Yeah.
Right? Those, they injected creativity into the scanning process, and so they're totally protected by copyright, but that doesn't lock up the underlying object, and it wouldn't lock up a scan that was just a pure scan of the thing.
Okay, the follow-up question is, has this been tested yet?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Who tested this?
There is a case. There is a case in this. Yeah. So this is actually comes out of, there was a case. It's called Meshworks, and it came out of the Ninth Circuit. And basically, it's a Toyota case.
They're way more strict than the Eighth Circuit. Is there an Eighth Circuit?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a 10th Circuit?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ninth Circuit.
Yeah.
It's not like that. They're not ordered like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. All
side
like
by
the entire
side.
country is broken up into these
Yeah,
circuits.
okay, so the Ninth
Actually,
Circuit.
the Ninth Circuit's like one of the hippie circuits, like the California circuit.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's a case where Toyota had hired a company to scan all of their trucks, and then they would have digital files, and when they did ads, they could just like, turn them blue, turn them red, or do
yeah.
whatever. And
They don't have to keep filming the trucks.
they've
all
got a
the
digital asset,
Yeah.
and they just sort of run with it.
render it and put it in and have it run down the mountain.
Which once I learned this, I was like, I look at car commercials differently now.
No, they're like Apple commercials.
Like, is
Those
that
aren't.
real?
It's not,
Yeah,
it's a
right.
rendering.
But yeah, and so Toyota just sort of like took the scans, and the company that did the scanning was like, no, you're using them without our permission.
Oh, you're left to license for every use.
You have to you're infringing our copyright.
Just like a photo, because usually when you get a photo done by a photography agency,
This is an ad agency.
this is an agency issue. Yeah.
Look at that racket.
Normally, you'd have to license it every
Right.
single time. Oh, you're doing another ad. Well, you have to relicense it, and they didn't. That's what Toyota actually was.
Yeah.
Not the way. Usually, the bigger company is the company that is a little
Yeah.
aggressive, but they actually were.
Yeah, and they won, and so the file is not protected by copyright for the reasons that we were just talking about. And so that's one case, but in my opinion, it's very well reasoned. It makes a lot of sense, and so this is a sort of precedent that is logical. And if you look back to the history of photography, we're talking about photographs like they're protected by copyright. And that wasn't always true. There was a period of time where where photographs were not protected by copyright because they were seen similarly as just sort of like nature reacting chemically with the world.
Yeah.
But then a lot of photographs.
It's not like a painting, right?
Yeah.
Because it was exactly what you see,
Yeah,
right?
it's just like science happening on paper.
Yeah.
So do you think it's going to change where the scan is going to be copyrightable, or do you think it's going to be what it is right now, which is, nope, you don't own the copyright to the scan?
I hope not. I hope that it stays open, both because I think the legal reasoning is sound, and because I think it's great that we have this world where the simple act of digitizing things doesn't give someone new rights in those things.
Okay. Is the only reason that it's not all messed up yet is because a big company hasn't made a 3D scanner where they have a proprietary format or something? Is that the reason why this isn't messed up yet? Because I feel like things get messed up, like Sony kept messing around with music,
with the,
8-track.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, like their memory cards.
Their memory cards, and everything was encrypted, and you couldn't share files. You
Yeah,
couldn't
like
do anything.
DRM files.
Yeah, and so right now it's so new.
Yeah.
There's nobody who has anything to lose yet.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if HP had a hollow camera,
Right.
and then it became really popular. I don't know why I'm picking on HP, but like Lexmark, aren't
Right.
they the worst?
Yeah. Yeah, they're bad with printers. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Lexmark makes a very good 3D scanner,
Right.
and the files,
Right.
they're like, nope, you can't
You can't.
do anything with
Okay, I have a question. So we got scanned by like a human scanner thing.
it. Yeah. Doob, it's called. or
So we
Yeah.
get these little things printed. They refuse to give us the files.
Yeah.
But do they have any rights to those? I mean, I'm not going to go there and like knock on the door and be like, I demand. But
Yeah.
like,
So this is actually really important to remember, and this is something that's so easy to get lost when you're doing internet stuff and you're like copyright, 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 copyright.
Yeah.
Like, there are other laws. Like, they're under no obligation
Yeah.
to hand. I mean, you have a
even though they
factory-
don't own it.
Yeah.
Even though they have no legal.
I think it goes to like contract
they
law because
control
there's a
it.
terms of service that you're
Okay.
like, I agree that the files.
But if I
everything
did get the files, I can do whatever I want with them.
Right. They have no obligation to give you the files, but if they gave you the files, you basically could do whatever you
have
want.
to
They may
track-
be able to try and lock you down with contract.
Yeah.
But
Of course, yeah.
most importantly, if they gave you the files and you put them up on the internet and I took them down,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to come after me.
Okay.
So
Hey, this is like,
really
you're the
open.
lawyer, I gotta ask you this question.
They would lose because of the Ninth Circuit case with Toyota.
Yes, and the fact that they couldn't use copyright, and if they tried to use a contract to limit it, the contract would be between you and them, and I'm not bound.
Yeah.
Which is why everyone likes copyright, because it's so much more powerful than contract law.
It binds everybody, yeah.
Right.
Okay. If you had to, well, the Toyota case already happened, so I was going to say, if you can imagine like the perfect test case,
Yeah.
what would it be? But it sounds like you kind of have one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a really good test case, and I think the next step that's going to be really exciting for the scanning is when museums and other cultural institutions start. There's some that are doing scanning already,
Yeah.
but doing more scanning and pushing that stuff out. You're going to have this incredible body of work that's accessible to people. There'll be digital versions.
Because
of
there's like
them.
nothing coming out of copyright for like the next like 50
Yeah,
years.
right. Yeah,
It's like it's
yeah,
over.
Yeah, but we have millennia worth of 3D stuff that museums hold and other glam institutions hold, and if they can scan them and put them out in the world, then all of a sudden there's going to be this incredible body of digital files that represent these parts of our cultural heritage that people are going to do crazy things with.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to print them out. They're going to remix them. They're
I
going
want to totally
rebuild
remix
them.
this Nefertitian. She's cool.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So
All right.
then on the flip side, instead of like test cases and edge cases and all that, so what would you like to see going forward? Is it these museums putting files? Where would a museum scan stuff and put files?
I mean,
right
they
now?
could put them anywhere. They could put them up on their own website. They could put them on someplace like Thingiverse. There's so many things that they could do to distribute them and just make them available. But if you start building up this, part of this is legal and part of this is a cultural norm. And so you start building up this cultural norm that these 3D scans are available, and once they're available, people start doing amazing things with them. Then everyone sees the value of this sort of work and this sort of file being accessible. And as people understand that value, then it gets reinforced. And so if it's challenged in court, there's the legal reason why you want to maintain this rule and the cultural reason that everyone understands the cultural value of being able to access all of this work.
Okay.
Wow.
I feel like this is super futuristic. Like,
It's happening now, but it'll happen more
Yeah.
in the future. I mean, it is likely that the next generation of cell phones have chips in them that are
Yeah.
optimized for 3D scanning.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
So-
have one of the Ricoh. I don't know if it's the right Ricoh Theta S.
Yeah.
It's a 360 camera,
Yeah.
and there's a fisheye on each side. You could totally tell what's going to happen next. Like first, there's going to be like VR stuff, and that's not going to work out. And the next thing is be like, well, we may as well have it like scan objects, which you can kind of do right now, anyways. And then just like the iPhone became the most popular camera, like on Flickr and where they track all this stuff. We'll eventually have it.
Yeah.
So you can scan things. So there'll probably be a ton of stuff. What's the file that comes out from all these scans?
I don't even know.
STLs maybe?
I mean, I
Is it
don't.
just like a XML thing, or it's just a bunch of?
Mesh points?
Eh,
Yeah, especially I don't actually don't know.
Probably just a bunch of
I
mesh
should know
points.
that.
File format doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
As long as it can be imported in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. So where would people go to read about this?
So if you go to
is it a
Shapeways,
white paper?
it's a white paper.
It's
Yeah,
a white paper.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if you go to shapeways.com, it's on the blog. There's a blog post about it.
Okay. This is interesting that Shapeways has someone like you there, because I feel like a lot of companies that are in the service bureau industry, things happen to them, and they're not participating in it, and they don't know what's going to happen next. It seems like this is way out there. Like in 5 years, yes, this is going to be so normal
Right.
and boring.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, holograms, or maybe Miku can't come here, like but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a part of one of our obligation. I think is one of the obligations that we see to our community is because of what we do, we're the first in so many different areas.
Yeah.
And so doing that right and doing that in a kind of public and open way and saying, like, this is what we think, this is how we think it should work, because that's how those norms get set. And if you don't do it kind of inclusively, then you don't really advance the ball very much.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna, because we're doing like an interviewee show, I have just a couple of questions that go along with this.
Yeah.
So the next thing after this, I would say is, well, a 3D scan isn't too far off from like DNA sequencing, medical scans. Like, so what's your thought on that? Like with DNA sequencing, who owns?
Yeah, MRI
If I get my DNA sequence, who owns the DNA?
Yeah, I mean,
do you know the answer?
I think, I think.
Is it Toyota?
Yeah, Toyota. Toyota is the answer.
Yeah.
It's always Toyota. That's how they're gonna like come
Darn
back.
it.
No, but I mean, it's a big deal because we see this over and over where companies who are providing services that are life-saving services, they collect a huge amount of data, and sometimes it's not accessible. I mean, this last year, one of the DMCA proceedings where you try and petition the Copyright Office to get access to things that are protected by DRM, one of the categories were people who had implanted medical devices, so like pacemakers that were...
We talked about that earlier.
Right, they were reading all this data about their heart, and they were like, I want access to this. And the company said, no, we're locking it up. And they were like,
it's in me.
This is in me, and
it's in me.
It's my vital signs.
Yeah.
I want to have access to this information. And they said, I don't even know why I want this. I don't have a specific use for it.
Oh, there's nothing worse than like a nerd who wants access to data and they have no reason for it, like because they're just so stubborn.
Like I don't know. When I get it, I'll figure
But
it out.
like you can't tell me what I can't have.
Right, it's my stuff. And so figuring out what that access means becomes really important. And a lot of it is probably has to come through legislation because if you're in a medical situation and you need that scan, you need that information, you're not in a strong bargaining position to be like, I know I'm about to have a heart attack, and I know I need a pacemaker, but I'm going to hold out
the DRM-free one.
until you give me the one that I want.
Well, actually, the thing about pacemakers, they're implanted for decades, and the company may not make it. What if they declare bankruptcy?
Most companies don't make it.
Most medical companies get sued out of existence, and so maybe you want to make sure that you have access because, it's like everyone has stories of like, ever since DRM music and books, like half of my DRM books I can't read.
Yeah.
They're just like the company or like Google. Didn't Google have a music service? Like
Google has like 10 music services.
Microsoft Zune stuff sunsetted.
Yeah.
So I have a DNA story, which this one hit the legislation. So one, I had to do weird stuff to get the DNA thing because New York doesn't allow it. So you have to get the DNA test from somewhere else.
Oh, to do like
so I got that going.
Yeah.
And I sent it off, and 23andMe was one of them. Or
yeah, right.
And there's a new service that you have to get your DNA out of 23andMe, then you can export it and then upload it to. It's called like Prometheus, and they charge like $5, but they're not allowed to say it's a diagnostic service.
Right.
They're just like, give us data, and we look at data, and it just happens to be DNA. And so it does an analysis on it because 23andMe can't. So you export it out because of laws, and doctors don't want you to self-diagnose with your own DNA.
Yeah.
And then you move it around the internet a little bit, and then you upload it, and then it's like, okay, here's your report.
Right.
But it's just not. We don't know where you got this from.
Right. I mean, I have to say that I'm a little bit sympathetic to the idea that if you are going to be giving people quasi-medical diagnoses, maybe you have an obligation to pair it with some sort of counseling. If you're telling somebody, that's what I mean. But I think a lot of
high-level stuff they do.
Yeah, some of the regulations are like, hey, if you're gonna tell somebody, you have a 60% chance of having a cardiac arrest.
Or they say, well, it's never something that simple. It's always you have a 200% more likely chance of getting ovarian cancer. When they're like, oh my God, I'm 200%, I'm going to get it. But it's like, no, 200% of like 0.001.
Right.
So
maybe
it's like
that news should come with somebody who's like, let me put this in perspective for you.
Yeah, most people don't understand proportions or percentages.
Yeah.
Like I barely do.
Like the world is probably a better place where if you get told that you have a 200% chance of getting ovarian cancer, it comes from someone who can immediately say, and by the way, this is what this means. You're not going to die tomorrow. Let's put this in perspective.
Yeah.
Or
you definitely shouldn't smoke. Like
Or alternatively, if it's like if you have a 90% chance of having like Parkinson's or something, you also want someone there who says, this is what this means. These are the community, and these are the places you can plug into. It's not crazy for me to have some sort of regulation when you have, even if it's precise, to say, if you're going to be given this information, you're going to have a medical professional walk you through this.
I want my OSHA, when I license for the OSHA checkmark thing, I'm going to have counselors. If you're going to look through my code, here's a counselor you can talk to for therapy.
Okay. Well, this is exciting. Thank you for not only doing the white paper, but coming on the show and talking about it, because now this is like the audio version.
Yeah, right. So you don't have to read the paper now. All good.
Well, no, you should still read the paper. But that's neat because it's going to be something that comes up.
Yeah.
Like who owns the copyright of the scans for the objects. There's easy ones right now, and then it seems like, oddly enough, there was a case that kind of determined what it's probably going to be, but that doesn't mean
it could.
anything.
I mean, look, it could be overturned. It could be.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of ways it could go wrong, and so the fact that we have one case is great. It's better than none.
Yeah.
But it's not like.
We're not wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And last up, thank you for your participation in making sure that the filaments weren't going to be DRM. So what a lot of people don't know is you were at
You fight for the 3D users.
Well, there was a chance, there was large companies, I think Stratasys was one of them,
Yeah.
and what they wanted to do was DRM the filament, so if you were to put in other filament into your 3D printer, it would be breaking DRM, that's breaking a law.
Right.
And that's what they were trying to push through.
Yeah. They were trying to. They were. Of course, it's legal, so it's complicated. They were trying to. We were petitioning to say that if I put my random filament into 3D printer, I'm not breaking the law.
Yeah, you wanted to make it clear.
We wanted to make it clear, and Stratasys was like, no, it should be against the law. And so this was the fight at the Copyright Office that happens every.
But it wasn't
3
like there was a
years.
test case. This was just in preparation
Yeah.
for if there was a test case, then
Then just to say, what we wanted is the Copyright Office to just bless it across the board and say, of course this doesn't violate the law. You get an exemption.
yeah.
And this is the same process that was about farm equipment and about pacemakers and about people being able to access video.
Or if you had a screen reader and you needed to decrypt an ebook,
Yep.
so you can push it through the
Yeah.
screen reader.
Yeah.
So there's exemptions.
There's
They're not
exemptions.
saying do whatever you want. They're just saying for this use there's
For this
exemptions.
use, there's not a
And you
violation
wanted
of
to
law.
make it clear that if you use different filament, it's okay. You're
Right.
not breaking the law.
Because they
Right.
make these huge sweeping laws that cover like
yeah,
everything,
everything.
so you have to
And
chip
why
away.
would Stratasys want it to be against the law?
So I think the charitable answer is they want to give people a controlled experience.
Okay.
And so they want to say, the filament comes from us. We've tested it with the machines. We can guarantee quality.
That's reasonable, okay.
It's all going to work, and we're going to verify it. And the answer to that is that's fine.
Okay.
But if I don't want that service, if I don't want your verification for whatever reason, I should be able to turn it off.
Yeah.
And that was what the fight was about. It wasn't about just destroying it, because if you want that quality control, you want to be buying all the way through, that's great, that's fine. But you should have the option to buy from somebody else.
Yeah, because lots of people like to use different refills
Yeah.
in something that requires refills. For maybe sometimes for 3D printers, not every 3D printing company made flexible filament.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't be breaking the law if you want to use weirdo filaments.
Yeah.
And that's odd that they would want that to be against the law. The thing that I was nervous about was their company that they acquired, MakerBot, was part of this discussion.
Absolutely.
And that's a hobbyist product.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's why it was a little scary, because it's like, whoa, if MakerBot, which was kind of the leader at the time, does this, then what is everyone else going to end up doing?
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I think a lot of people were concerned, was that they were taking a really strong position, and MakerBot can be a leader in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So ironically, because MakerBot was started because nobody wanted to pay for filament for their big 3D printers, because you have to buy it, it's expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah.
I know, we'll just make a printer, use any
Well, and it
filament.
was funny because at the time, MakerBots, and still, MakerBots didn't have that kind of chip verification.
Yeah.
But they were just Stratasys was saying, we want to reserve the right.
What if we
in the
want
future
to?
do
Yeah.
this? And so.
I can understand that. They don't want to take, if there is a right, if they have a legal right, they don't want to take it away.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're like the guy who doesn't know what he wants that heart rate data for, but he knows he wants it. They
Right.
have a legal right. They want to keep it, even if they
wanna be
don't know what to
totally-
use it for.
Yeah, I just want to be told I can get it if I want it.
Although it was funny because 3D Systems, who had their desktop model at the time, did have that verification chip, and they didn't challenge the request.
Huh.
Like they didn't come in and say.
Well, they were about to kill it off anyways.
No, but to their credit, they could have come in and said something.
Okay. Well, that's show night. We're going to get out of here. Thank you so much. Went into extended time. The Coda
Thank
scanners.
you.
Yeah, we'll do 2 giveaways next week.
Okay.
And
Today we give you time and love.
Yeah. You know how expensive it is per hour to have a lawyer here? Please
Oh
buy.
my God, so much.
Please buy.
He's going to send us a bill.
So
Order
please-
things,
yeah,
scanners.
Code scanners. And next week we'll have, it's not out yet, and we'll have some
New
more
products. We'll have giveaways. Maybe I'll give away one of these books. Maybe we'll give away 2. Oh,
Yeah.
who knows?
Can you use the code scanners to buy that book?
We
Not
don't
yet.
sell this yet.
Not yet. It's
We're
not
promoting.
sold
We're
out.
promoting this, but we don't have any in stock. But you can go to crowdsupply.com
Yeah.
and pick one up, or go to Bunny's webpage. Just Google for Bunny, and it'll probably be
Yeah.
the first link. And then he has a link to the exact URL, which I don't remember.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
Yeah, next
Lawyer
white,
fist bump?
next white paper you can come by.
Yeah.
DNA and copyright.
DNA and copyright. Who
No.
owns you?
Yeah.
Do you
It'll
or
be
not
nice.
you?
I don't know about like MRI scans. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's-
People like to do that, and then people have 3D printed their skulls and all that.
Yeah.
You've seen that? All right, exciting stuff. Thank you so much. We'll see everyone. We have a picture of a cat. We have to do that. We will still do.
Can't skip
And
that.
here is your moment of Zener.